Good evening, everyone. This is the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. Call the meeting to order. And Jessica, do we have a quorum? Okay. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Item C is identify possible conflicts of interest. Anyone have a conflict of interest tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment period. At this time, the mayor will recognize persons in attendance wishing to address the council. Upon recognition by the mayor, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. Comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes, and persons are asked to be respectful when addressing the council. No action will be taken regarding items not on the agenda. However, the council will take comments from the public under advisement. Please note that council members will not respond to your comments or questions. First up is Sierra Starner Heffron. Sierra.
Business Development Director, there we go, at the Marshfield Area Chamber Foundation, which is the foundation arm of Mackey. I am the Business Development Director, so I'm just going to go over a scorecard, briefly what I'm working on. So this kind of provides a framework of why I do the things that I do, and kind of their relevance to economic development. So hopefully it's demonstrating the return on investment. And the other thing you have in front of you is the economic profile. So that is a promotional tool. We can hand that to a developer. They can get a quick snapshot of Marshfield and developable sites that we have, some quick demographics. So this will be administered, displayed at City Hall here, at Mackey, online. We'll distribute it at the clinic. And then the commercial realtors will also get some copies throughout the year. So this is just an ongoing thing. I'm happy to have it done. This is hot off the press. So first week that it's available. So real quick, just go through the scorecard. This is just a high level view, kind of just giving you a highlights of what I'm working on. The chamber did 10 ribbon cuttings this year, or thus far, I should say, second quarter. So that's about 6 new brick and mortar businesses. We've got 2 expansions for moving to different locations. 18 clients assisted with resources. So that's calls, that's emails, that's just people coming in. 16 business retentions conducted. So that is a special focus of mine is the restaurants, and I'll talk about more of that in a minute. As far as workforce outcomes, retaining a talent and anticipating for future workforce needs is a high priority. We have a job board at Mackey that gets a ton of views. That is something local we can use. Christy at our office is the manager of our youth apprenticeship programs. So these are doing great. She is working really hard to expand the program. These are partnered with 4 schools, about 60 employers. Health Career Connections is also about 20 different employers. So this is a really great asset for the city. What I see needs improvement is creating a recruitment strategy for businesses, workforce. I think with Synergy, working with Synergy, we got a site readiness evaluation that was super successful, positive feedback. So that is really good news. We'll get a report in August, and that'll kind of give us more direction on industries to go after, to recruit, gives us a little bit more background on what fits with the industries we have. So that's great news. That's exciting. I'm also proud of collaborating with Midstate, Holiday Inn, trying to get more culinary workforce, culinary workshops and trainings here in Marshfield. You have to go to Rapids for a lot of them. So hopefully if we can bring that to Marshfield, that'll just expand our workforce pipeline in the hospitality industry. We've put together 4 workshops thus far, more to come, 2 professional development book clubs have met. And I'm also working on a grant for the WEDC. So this will be in the fall. Hopefully this will be, if we get it, it'll be used to enhance and improve our existing restaurants. So that's good news. That's exciting. That's coming up. We've had a lot of industrial, or I should say manufacturing expansions. So that's all good news. I'd say that's on track. And I think what we could still use improvement on is retention of young adults, general net migration into central Wisconsin. So that's not something that we can slow down on. So we're working with the Manufacturers Small Council, something that I've developed to try and look at the modern manufacturing. How can we dispel kind of old negative stereotypes about it, showcase what modern manufacturing looks like, try and expand the view of all the different career paths that you could get in manufacturing, construction. So that's something we're working on, not an easy fix. And I guess my time is up. Otherwise, I just want to say, just coming off the heels of Hub City Time or Hub City Days and Dairy Fest, the Hub City concerts, I think these huge events are so impactful. They're so important to our community. And so just a shout out to Mackey and Main Street Visit, Parks and Rec for putting these on. It's a ton of work, but we also need volunteers. So they couldn't do it without the volunteers. So if there's any newcomers to the city, young people want to get involved, we need their involvement. We need you to be part of it, what makes them bigger and better. So just a plug for that too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. Next up is Matt McLean.
All right. Hello, everybody. Matt McLean, 609 North Hume, and I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of the City of Marshfield Communications Committee as well as Visit Marshfield. I really just want to do a quick plug. Tom and Dave do a lot of great work for the city with the Communications Committee, and we were kind of looking at the budgets at our last meeting, and it's going to be pretty tight. So just want the council to, support them and just try to support the work that they do to keep communications out to the public and internally is a very important thing. So that's my two cents on that. Brief update from Visit Marshfield. As many of you may know, we recently purchased a building nearby. I think you can just see it behind this white building behind you. It's the old Market on 6th. And so we've been looking for a few years to really have a real true visitor center. And I think we found it. We're currently in the design phase, and we're really just looking to make a beautiful, welcoming place for visitors and the local alike to celebrate the great things in Marshfield. Also, a lot has happened this summer, and the hotels have been busy. I want to congratulate Carter and Main Street Marshfield for putting on a great Hub City Days. I think I saw a few of you in the dunk tank, so I hope that was fun. Also, I want to thank the Radetzky No Joke Dairy near Stratford for hosting Farm Tech Days. That brought hundreds of visitors and overnight hotels in Marshfield. And also, recently, the dog show at the fairgrounds brought those as well. There were 2 events that unfortunately didn't didn't happen, the hot air balloon, Dairyland Balloon Jubilee, and an adult flag football tournament I was working on. But as we came down to it, those were the same week as Farm Tech Days and the dog show, so we were actually running out of hotel rooms. And if you need one more reason to not like the Chicago Bears, they ran a flag football tournament the same weekend, and the teams defected there because they had people doing autographs and gave up $15,000 in prizes. So, moving on, last but not least, and I might steal a little bit of your thunder, Nick, sorry, but the American Legion baseball tournament just started this week, this morning at 10:30 a.m. So this is not your normal Friday, Saturday, Sunday baseball tournament. This is like Tuesday through Sunday. So there's a lot of teams here staying in the hotels, and they're putting on a great event that's bringing a lot of people here. And last but not least, the Hub City Concert Series last show will be this Friday. We have a great doubleheader. We're going to have a long night of music starting at 6 o'clock. And I just invite you to come out and check out the concert series. Oh, and also Marshfield is playing at 7:30. So if you get done with this meeting tonight, you can go to the baseball game and see them play Toma. But again, anyway, the Hub City Concert has been great. I've really enjoyed working with Tim and Nikki, and we've been on budget. We had a couple rain locations at the Chestnut Center, but that worked out great. And so just looking forward I'm glad that we were able to keep that alive, and looking forward to working with Tim in the future on that. And that's all I got.
Thanks for the update, Matt. Next up is Nick Cum.
Good evening, Nicholas Cum. I'm representing the American Legion Post 54 baseball program. I'm part of the board. The address is PO Box 416. If you need that for the record. This spring, the American Legion Post 54 baseball board completed several improvements to the Legion Hackman Field in preparation for hosting the 2026 American Legion AAA State Baseball Tournament. The enhancements included a new scoreboard, expanded dugouts space by relocating the fence, new dugout benches, and a new public address system. These improvements were made possible through support of Sanford Health Marshfield Clinic, Nasonville Dairy, Wheeler's Automotive Group, the city's Park and Recreational Department, and many volunteers. Their partnership helped improve one of our community's premier recreational facilities while reducing the overall cost to the city. And I want to thank everyone who contributed to the success of that project. As Matt mentioned, this week we are proud to host the 2026 American Legion AAA State Baseball Tournament at the Hackman Field. Games began today at 10:30. 4 games today, 4 games tomorrow, 3 on Thursday, 2 on Friday, and 2 possibly on Saturday as well. So it'll be going all week. So if you have an opportunity, please come out. Marshfield plays Toma tonight at 7:30, and we do have some first pitch, and we also have the Pleasure Legion and so forth. So the games begin today, like I mentioned, and they feature some of the best 16 to 19-year-old baseball players in the state of Wisconsin. Teams are from Sheboygan, Watertown, Eau Claire, Wisconsin Rapids, Kimberly, Marinette, Toma, and Marshfield are competing. In addition to providing a great baseball for our community, the tournament brings in visitors who will support our local hotels, our restaurants, our gas stations, our retailers, and other businesses, creating a positive economic impact for the city. Admissions to the games help offset the cost of hosting the tournament, and I encourage everyone to stop out and support those outstanding youth athletes. I'd also like to thank Matt and Visit Marshfield for providing a grant that helped us offset some of the tournament costs, and all the volunteers and sponsors whose efforts are helping to make this event possible. Lastly, as the city continues to look for opportunities to increase revenue and reduce expenses, it may be worthwhile to explore policies that encourage community organizations to invest in city facilities. I think this is a perfect example. Organizations that fund significant capital improvements could receive a temporary reduction or waiver of facility rental or game fees. In the case of the recent improvements at Legion Hackman Field, a limited waiver of game fees could recognize the substantial private investment that was made to improve the facility. Similar incentives can encourage youth sports organizations, civil groups, and other nonprofits to make long-term improvements to our parks and recreation facilities along with other facilities. By creating a true public-private partnership, the city could leverage private dollars to improve public amenities while stretching the taxpayer dollars further. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Item E is approval of the minutes of the July 14th, 2026 meeting. Ms. Dallas, your move.
Motion to approve the minute.
And Mr. Rigel, you second that?
I do.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, please vote.
Just want to make sure we're not doing the reports from the commissions, boards, and committees, right? Correct?
Not at this time.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item F is staff update.
I'm not aware of any this afternoon, evening, whatever it is, at the wrong time of day. It's not aware of any tonight.
Okay, thank you. Item G is mayor's comments, and my comment today is, this is our last meeting with Ms. Tompkins as a member of this body. And I want to thank her for the time and energy that she's put into serving the citizens of not only District 3, but the whole city of Marshfield. It was my pleasure to sit next to her for her first year on the council and to spend 3 years on the utility commission with her and to see that how she grew into the position. And she's always prepared for the meetings and she's always inquisitive. So we wish her well on her move to Missouri, and I just want to congratulate you. And that is the only mayor's comment, so we'll move on to item H, council. Is there any council comment? Mr. Werman?
Thank you. I wanted to call out a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to just shout out the council members who were able to come out for the dunk tank. But also I really wanted to shout out Officer Iverson for pulling this together. He did send a quick email. We were able to raise $825 for Marshfield Area United Way. But I know that since my time on council, I've said a few times it'd be really nice if we could find ways to engage with the community a bit more. And this was a fantastic approach. It was a lot of fun. The Marshfield Police Department did a great job setting everything up and supporting us. I had a blast in the dunk tank. I know I got there right as Scott Cran was wrapping up his session, and it seemed like he was having a good time. So overall, just a great event, really well put together, and just appreciate Officer Iverson for reaching out to us even and proposing the idea. It turned out fantastic. And congrats on raising that money. I hope we can do more next year. And then the second comment I wanted to make tonight was just in reference to what Matt came up and talked about briefly. I was going to mention as well, and I wasn't sure if I should do it here or in the reports for commissions, boards, and committees. But just in general, wanted to call out communications. We have been talking about this a lot. We do have an agenda item tonight, but I really want to just press the council to consider communications funding prior to budget season. Once we get into this budget, it will be too late, in my opinion, to adopt it. We really need to start having these discussions about communications funding prior to and making sure we have a game plan. I know this last meeting that I had with them, we had a big discussion about it, and they would really appreciate your support if we could start talking about that now and get a plan in place prior to preparing the budget and then trying to review it. So appreciate the work that team's put in, and I'll yield the floor then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comment? Item I, city administrators update.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start just by echoing what you said about Councilmember Tompkins. And, I think I said it maybe when she first announced that she was leaving back in early June, but you've done a great job for District 3, just outstanding representative for your constituents, great to work with. And I don't think people realize what it's like to come to all these meetings, not just the council meetings, but committee and put in all the time that you do with emails and everything. So thank you and best wishes. Going on from there, I'd like to go back to when we had a bad day, which was a snowfall we had back in March, but we did put in with the state of Wisconsin for some reimbursement for some of the costs we incurred. I believe we put in initially 300,000 or so, and then found out that about 128,000 maybe were eligible. At the end of the day, we're going to receive 89,500 roughly. So we hope to get more, but I want to commend everybody who's involved from the Public Works Department, Tim Rasmussen, our street superintendent, Jordan Munger, our county manager, who worked really hard on this to make sure that we could submit and get as much money as possible, reimbursing us for the cost of that snowfall removal back in March. and that's a good thing for us. Speaking of money, we hope to get, some of us are going to be part of a presentation tomorrow to the SEED committee down in Wisconsin Rapids, looking for money from Wood County. We have 4 grant opportunities going forward, 2 from Parks and Recreation that Justin will be bringing forth. James has one and I have one, both on behalf of economic development. So hopefully things will go well and the committee will see fit to give us some money for 2027 projects. Also, I have a shout out for the people from Leadership Marshfield and all the great work that they did raising all the money that went into doing the playground project at Greasy Park, and call attention to the fact that on August 18th, there's going to be a special event from 5 to 8 p.m. We encourage everybody to go out and enjoy it, celebrating the great improvement that's been made out there, the wonderful playground equipment. And again, that's August 18th from 5 to 8 p.m. Please get out there and celebrate if you can. Also, I want to note that I'm still trying to find a date for the meeting of the council and the Fire and Police Commission jointly to talk about the new study that's been done on a potential fire training center for the south end of Marshfield. Made a couple attempts trying to get a quorum of both bodies. It's been hard, vacations and everything. I did talk to the Fire and Police Commission again the other day, and I'll say the same thing to the council, looking for creative ways to make this work. Possibly a 5 o'clock meeting before a regular council meeting at 6 o'clock, so you're planning on being here anyway. But look for an email and please respond as soon as you get it, letting me know what your availability might be. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thanks, Steve. Item J is reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Any reports from commissions, boards, or committees? Mr. Kranz.
Oh, I thought there was going to be a motion and then a second, but I would like to speak. I would like to pull item 10B for further discussion.
Yeah. I think you're referring to the consent agenda, which is
Yes,
right around the corner here.
That comes up next.
Consent agenda. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, any other reports from commissions, boards, and committees? Okay, now we will move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Dallas, you have a motion. And Mr. Rigel?
I'll second.
Okay. Now Mr. Kranz here.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. I would like to pull item 10B for further discussion, please.
Okay. Any other comments? Or any other concern? Okay. We'll be voting to approve everything except 10B. All those in favor, or please vote.
Mr. Warman?
Okay, that motion passes. Now, Mr. Kranz, your discussion on 10B.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience with me here. I do have to, I think most of you at the council got a email from my neighbor and constituent, Natalie, on July 20th regarding the 4th Street project. And just want to go over the fact, yes, and I'm aware that this is state and federal grants involved here, but I'm in concurrence with her email that there needs to be substantial modifications before we can approve any easements for public, city public works here. And just to highlight here, not going to take too much time, but the first thing is winter liabilities. There's insufficient tariff space for snow removal. The second would be there's a sidewalk ordinance trap. And I know there's 24 hours, but the snow keeps getting pushed back on the sidewalk because of the insufficient terrace. Third thing is the slip and fall hazards involved because of that. And the next thing would be have to object to the assessments for the sidewalks. Replacement is not necessary. Also, that we should do if I'm looking here correctly, at the wording, but a mandatory or a critical root zone evaluation. And this involves 100 plus and 100 plus, 20 plus, 125 plus year trees that should be preserved for the historic neighborhood. We should be looking at an erosion of the historic streetscape and neighborhood character, altering the historic infrastructure here. I would request that that we have an historic review intervention here regarding this project. And that would be Section 106 Historic Review Intervention. Property tax, and also we're dealing with a property tax inflation and the double financial jeopardy involved here for property tax owners. We have one of the highest property taxes in the country. This is already an issue here. So, and considering your alternatives, we could do a repaving. We could remove the public lane, just a couple of them, remove the public lanes and the curb, relocation, I should say. So just to paraphrase what my neighbors Natalie and Nelson were saying, I'm going to just read this conclusion because as a tax-paying resident of Marshfield, I ask that this email be formally read into the public record for the upcoming, and at that time it was the Board of Public Works meeting, and entered into the official project file for WIS.project ID 6995-12-02. The current proposal fails the common sense test of a Wisconsin winter, strips away our neighborhood's historic character, threatens our century-old ecological infrastructure, and wastefully inflates our already above-average tax burdens. I request that a formal response detailing how the engineering department plans to justify tearing up, and probably Public Works, tearing up already compliant 5-foot sidewalks, execute individual CRZ that I just mentioned, the critical root zone evaluations, issue historic tree conservation guarantees, and mitigate financial harm to the Pleasant Hill Historic Corridor. Sincerely, Natalie and Nelson. So I really would encourage council members to table this and not approve this and say no. We need to have further modifications and considerations. There's some serious concerns here. Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, I'd consider a motion of some sort, some action on item 10B. Mr. Cran.
Just to clarify, in order to have discussion on this issue, do we need to have a motion and a second to open discussion, or can they?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Rigel.
I'll move to approve.
And Mr. Varsho, you second that? Yeah. Okay, any discussion? Mr. Kranz, you have further discussion?
Am I able to make a motion to decline this as well?
No.
So it's already,
Not
okay.
at this point, I don't believe.
There's a motion to approve it. We will
Okay,
vote on the motion that's on the table when we're ready for that.
thank you.
Any comments? Seeing none, please vote. Oh. Ms. Tompkins, did you have a comment too? You buzzed in and just under.
Well, I was just wondering if maybe the Director of Public Works could give us just a little information, since I'm on Finance, Budget, and Personnel, and I didn't hear the initial presentation.
You explain what this motion is, this item is.
Sure. So this item was merely to approve a plat that displays all the temporary easements that are at this point determined necessary for this project to move forward. So the item in particular was to approve the plat and to initiate the relocation order, which allows our real estate consultant to start negotiating with property owners.
Thank you.
Mr. Carano.
Judge, can you remind me of the time frame on this project again?
It's 2028 construction. So they're in the kind of preliminary middle design phase right now. So real estate negotiations have not begun with individual property owners yet, but that's where this will lead to, this item.
And then can you kind of go over the impact of I don't serve on that committee, so can you go over the impact of what's going to happen in the neighborhood, just an overview?
Sure. So in broad terms, 4th Street will be reconstructed pretty much as you see it today. That was how that project was identified, how it was scoped, and how it's moving forward. I haven't seen highly detailed plans, but the stage they're at, I think they're considered 30%, maybe 60% plans. It is built to the exact same section that's there today. So no widening, no narrowing of the pavement or the sidewalks. I should rephrase it. It's top to bottom reconstruction, sanitary sewer, water main, storm sewer. I'm sure some of the private utilities will be involved as well.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Oh, Mr. Rigel.
Could you comment briefly on the trees that were brought up?
There are currently, and from what I recall from the plan, there are 4 trees in the right-of-way. They are near the Cedar intersection. The sidewalks are not being relocated. They will be reconstructed. In general, they're reconstructed completely because of many sewer and water lateral crossings. We've tried to do this piecemeal where we see differential sidewalk settling, et cetera. So the sidewalks are being planned to be reconstructed one end to the other. That includes ADA curb ramp retrofitting. So I think the trees that maybe Alderman Kranz is referring to are on the private side. And we can do what we can to avoid those. We haven't identified any that need to be removed as part of this project. So I guess I'll leave it at that at this point.
Perfect. And then, just to confirm, you said this is a 2028 project, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so with approving this isn't like the final thing. There's going to be additional steps between now and 2028?
Yes, several.
Perfect, thank you.
Seeing no further comments, please vote on the motion to approve item 10B.
Mr. Werman?
And that motion passes 9-0, or 8, 7, 7 to 9, 7 to 2. Next up is item M, a presentation of the 2025 financial audit, introduced by Jennifer Selensky, Finance Director, and presented by Stuart Randall, CLA.
Good evening. Each year, we go through an annual audit as a city, and as part of the process, our audit firm makes a presentation of the results to the Common Council, and here with us tonight is Stuart Randall, who is a manager at CLA.
Good evening, and can I just say thank you for having your air conditioning on? It is nasty out there. So as Jennifer indicated, this is our annual presentation of the audit. From a high-level preview, there's going to be nothing earth-shattering happening, which from an audit perspective is pretty much what you kind of want. Not a lot of changes happened, not a lot from a financial position concern, not a lot from an internal control concern. So I'm going to talk for a bit. I'm going to go through some numbers because Accountant Me loves our numbers. But any questions you have related to anything in the presentation, you should have a copy of the full financial statements. Yes, it's about 100 pages long and it's a riveting read, but I will do my best to answer any questions that you have throughout this. Just please interrupt me. So first off, what is the scope of our audit? If you look back to this exact slide last year, there is one thing that is missing that was on last year's presentation that is not on this year's presentation, and that is we did not have to do a federal single audit this year. For those that don't remember, the single audit is a federal grant internal control and compliance audit that is triggered when you spend a certain amount of federal expenditures. the federal government for 12/31/25 increased that threshold. Previously it was $750, now it's $1 million. Last year you spent $750, in 2025 you spent less than $1 million, so we didn't have to test that, those procedures, and so that's all I'm gonna say about that topic. If you cross over that $1 million in the future, we'll be happy to do it again as required by federal law, but that's a problem for when you get more grant money, which, let's face it, not the worst problem in the world. But on the other side of things, what we still do have in the scope of the audit is we did review the financial records, the financial statements. We did assess your internal controls. Both of those are in the 110-page report. And then there's the executive summary, which includes some required communications and a lot of the summarized financial information that is also included in this presentation. So what did the audit say? Well, as per usual, the audit opinion is unmodified, which is not always a given. That means that the financial statements, in our opinion, materially are correct. They reflect the financial position of the city as of December 31st, 2025. And just a reminder, audits are always a retrospective review. We're always looking in the past. And so since you guys are starting to kick off the budget process, you know, it's like, do we ever actually spend any time in the year that we're in? We're always looking back or looking forward, but now it's the time to put the final stamp on last year and move into the next year. So that unmodified opinion is good. I always say it's a commendation. It is. It's what the city wants. It helps keeps your debt borrowing costs low, and it keeps the citizens happy. In terms of our internal control assessment, we didn't have any material weaknesses, meaning we didn't identify any glaring errors in your internal controls that could lead to errors within your financial records. We did have to repeat the preparation of financial statements, but as we point out, that is a common finding for an entity of this size. Just in terms of a resource allocation, it's not necessarily the most beneficial use of city management's time to prepare that giant report when day-to-day operations are much more important to focus on and keep correct. I'm just going to pause for half a second in case there's any clarifying questions on that. And if there isn't, let's talk about one of the changes that happened this year. Didn't say that there weren't any, just...
Ms. Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's just go back to the significant deficiency, because that sounds alarming. You're just saying that the financial statements,
yep,
do they need to be prepared by government standards, federal standards, anything like that?
So from a accounting world perspective, these are the city's financial statements. And so whenever the city contracts with the auditors to assist in the preparation, that means that the city doesn't necessarily have the resources available on staff to prepare these financial statements. In addition, ensuring that these are in accordance with GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, it's a very technical process. There are a lot of rules, a lot of complications. And so what the city has decided to do is, instead of invest the time and the resources themselves, work with us as your audit firm to ensure that, you know, we work within the state. I think we work with between 400 or 500 different governments within Wisconsin alone. And so we have the resources to prepare these financial statements much more cost effective than if Jennifer or Jordan were to go out, spend the time, because even if they did spend the time and then we review these financial statements, then we find errors, then we get to repeat that finding just as a errors in financial statements finding. And for contrast, I've been doing this job for 13 years now. When I started, I had 3 entities prepare their own financial statements, down to 0 now. And so just the overall complexity of this has increased over time.
So I hear you say that because we didn't prepare them, we contracted it out and you prepared it for us, that somehow we get an F on the report card. I'm wondering if you could change the report card so we don't get a significant deficiency.
And what I'm saying is you're in very good company with that finding. And a significant deficiency, while those words sound, not to use the word in the definition, significant, there are various tiers of essentially financial statement finding that we have. You really want to avoid material weaknesses. Material weaknesses say that there is a flaw within your internal controls, that something will go wrong with your day-to-day accounting. There will be errors within it. This is essentially classified as the most minor of deficiencies because it really only affects this year-end report that is not, if I'm being honest, even though I've prepared it, I've reviewed it in the past, is not instrumental in your day-to-day decision-making. What's more important is the reports that Jennifer prepares for you on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, that is correct. And so, unfortunately, auditing standards say we have to show this as a deficiency. I wish we couldn't. I can give you an email and a address that you can write a letter and say, please change the auditing standards. I wish you luck. So, anything else on that, or?
No other questions
Okay.
at this time.
Yeah, like I said, please interrupt, and if I miss something, flag me down. So, there was one of those new pesky accounting standards that were in effect for 2025, but I'm going to try and spend about 10 seconds on it. It was about risk disclosures, and none of the listed ones had a major impact on you. So we didn't add any disclosures. If one of those 5 listed events were to happen, it would appear as a paragraph in the financial statements. Didn't happen. We'll watch for it in the future. On to some of the financial statement numbers. Looking at some of the trends, the history, just to give you a, perspective from an outside source as to what we're seeing within the financial statements themselves. First off, always like to focus on the general fund because that's your primary operating fund. And that graph going up and to the right means that you have been adding to your reserves, and you've been adding to those reserves pretty healthily. And I believe that has been one of the city's goals, because where your reserves were at historically, at least in compared to what your operations were at, was not in accordance with your policy. And the recommendation has been that you maintain 25 to 30%. That's kind of an industry standard of your annual expenditures as part of your fund balance. And so I blew this out a little bit, not just focus on the 5 years, but that is that exact formula to say, what is your fund balance, at least unassigned fund balance, compared to your expenditures? I went back to 2018, which is where you bottomed out at that 11.4%, and really wanted to focus on just over the past, 7, 8 years, you've really been able to recover that up to the 36.74. Your policy currently says you want to target that 25 to 30% of budgeted. I calculated it on actual, so if there's any discrepancies, that's what it is. But you have now become, for the last couple of years, in compliance with your policies and really have striven to, maintain and get into compliance with that overall recommendation by government. Looking a little bit more into depth as to why that has happened over the years, I compared your budgeted revenues to your actual revenues, and same with your expenditures. And it shows your discipline in staying in with your budget, because you can set a budget that is balanced, but in terms of actually sticking to it, being realistic, what has also helped is interest rates have added a bunch of interest income onto that revenue line, which has helped. But to balance a budget, raise revenue, decrease expenses, stay within your limits. And this has shown for 5 years now, within your general fund specifically at least, you have been able to do that, both in setting a realistic budget, but also your operations have stayed within there. Now, that doesn't necessarily make setting realistic budgets in the future easier, but it does remove the burden of having to recover from a prior deficit. But the general fund is not your only primary operations. Your utilities, as governed by the PSC, it is also a point to monitor those because they are significant operations. The official rate of return is calculated based on the PSC. As you can see, for 2025, 5.56 and 5.44 for the electric and water. I have a slide next slide that focuses on some of your other enterprise funds, but at least in terms of the regulated utilities, those are healthy rates of returns. You'll notice that water utility had a bit of a dip in 2024, I believe that was caused by some one-time expenses related to some filter sands and nozzles at the treatment facility. But also in 2025, you implemented a new rate case, I think in May of 25, which also increased that revenue side. So your authorized rate of return for the water is now 6.2, came out at 5.44, which is right in trend to get up to the 6.2 since it wasn't a full year of revenue. And so just continuing to monitor that, because you will see in headlines, giant, at some municipalities, giant rate cases, you had to double your water rates. And the way you prevent those nasty headlines, monitor your rate of returns, stay on top of it. I know Nick is doing a good job at that because you are doing these rates of returns and you are right in line with your authorized rates of return. Like I said, you have other utilities, you have other enterprise funds. And so it's a lot of numbers, but essentially looking at your enterprise funds, electric, water, communications, your wastewater, your emergency medical services, they're all coming up in the black. They're all having good, you're recovering your expenses, you're generating reserves for future projects, you're able to make your debt service payments by having these positive returns. Yes, the EMS did have 2 of those, dips, at least in terms of operating revenue, but especially in 2025, you received an FAP grant that really offset that, and that's why there's such a difference in the operating income and the change in net position on that front. That's all I'm going to say for numbers, but always open for more questions. If not, just some trends that we're seeing in the industry overall. Like I said, our firm, we work with 400 or 500 governments in the state, a lot more nationwide. And this is just a reminder to say, you guys are not alone. There is a lot of turmoil happening in the world of government finance. First, the economy has such a big impact on everything, even in terms of your net new construction. I have talked extensively here before about the turnover that we're seeing in government finance positions. The fact that you haven't had that for several years has given you that sense of stability, making me a happy auditor because turnover increases risks of errors and we have to do different procedures. Also, the hot topic right now is AI. How are governments starting to input that into day-to-day operation? We're not seeing it too much at governments of this size, but in terms of trying to automate some of those simple routine tasks, not necessarily starting with the pie in the sky, but what are the day-to-day operations that can be implemented and how to make sure that the results of that is correct, because as we know, AI sometimes imagines things and can cause chaos when it's used without that secondary review. And then the political and legislative uncertainty. We have an election coming up, don't know what's going to happen. So those are the concerns we're watching on. I believe we had a webinar last week that highlighted some of those items. There's some other concerns in auditing world in terms of some of those federal grant requirements, but that's for my pain and suffering, not necessarily your pain and suffering. Then we talked about that there wasn't really any for new GASBs that were input for this year. To give you a preview of what's coming next year, this one's going to be a little bit more intense, and it primarily relates to this magical, what gets reported in this document, just in terms of how it looks. One of the big changes is in the proprietary fund statements, not necessarily in how anything is recorded day to day. And by proprietary funds, I am talking about the utilities, the Marshfield utilities, wastewater, EMS. It's creating a new category of revenues and expenses, essentially. Because right now, we just have operating revenues and operating expenses, and then everything else. What that doesn't really reflect is there are items that you receive that are essentially paid for or used for operations, but by definition can't appear in there. So they're just tweaking the definitions. So for example, that FAP grant that you received this year, you used it for operations, but because it's a grant, it's non-operating. So it's going to appear in this new section of revenues and expenses. Or the utilities payment in lieu of taxes will appear as this, in this section. It's called non-capital subsidies. And so it will allow a better reflection of the complete operational picture as opposed to trying to pick out what's classified as non-operating. It'll say, okay, Yes, it might not be specifically generated from your operations, but it's going to be used for operations. And so it will give that better picture of how is these actions performing. That will be reflected in next year's financial statements. It's pretty much the biggest change, and guess what? We'll point out everything and we'll explain all of the changes when we actually can say, this is what it was, this is what it is now, but it's not going to be a huge burden on management to implement. It is primarily going to be on whoever prepares the financial statements. But like I said, next year's problem. Then just, we have to throw in the conversation about we are here to help the city. We perform more than just audit services. If there is anything from a financial consulting, from an operational point of view, IT risk assessments, we are here to help the city if they are here. Also, any entity out there, we have an office on the north side of Marshfield. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you as well. Then contact information. We're here more than just, during our audit fieldwork, and today we are accessible year round. I like to not work on Christmas if possible, but if worse comes to worse, we are available.
Any more questions for Stuart? Okay, the recommended action here is to accept and place on file. And Mr. Giles, you have a motion?
Yes, motion to accept and place on file.
And Ms. Dallas, you second that?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman,
And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Item N is a request to approve resolution number 2026-20, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $9,105,000 general obligation promissory notes, series 2026A, introduced by Jennifer Sklensky, Financial Director, and presented by Kayla Thorpe of Taylor.
This borrowing will represent projects that were approved in our 2026 budget. And with us this evening is Kayla Thorpe from Ellers, and she will be presenting the resolution and going through the required documents for you to make your vote.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. If I'm possible, I will just share my screen so you can all follow along, but I believe you have this document in your packet. My name is Kayla Thorpe. I am the city's financial advisor at Ellers. Thank you for having me tonight. And tonight before you is the pre-sale report and authorizing resolution for $9,105,000 general obligation promissory note series 2026A. And as Jennifer mentioned, this is to fund the city's capital improvement plan and projects, which you've kind of discussed over the last year, improved as part of your 2026 budget. A lot of the text in here outlines a lot of the kind of legalese that we're required to disclose to you, your authority under state statute to authorize GO notes, the term of 20 years, so on and so forth. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over that. But one thing I will jump to is the schedule on page 6 of the pre-sale report to kind of get an understanding of how the next few weeks are going to play out for the sale of the GO notes. Tonight we're reviewing the pre-sale report. You'll hopefully adopt the parameters resolution. What that does is that sets parameters for the sale. And defers authorization of the sale to the city administrator or the finance director should the bids fit within those parameters. And we've established those parameters based off of recent and conservative estimates of interest rates, as well as maximum bids and minimum bids to keep you well within your GO borrowing capacity, as well as under bank qualification, so that there's a potential of better interest rates if you remain under bank qualification. So all that is outlined in the in the resolution that was presented to you or is presented to you by Quarles and Brady, the city's bond attorney. And so that is all happening tonight. We will be having a rating call actually next week, Tuesday, with Moody's Ratings Investor Service, and they'll assign a credit rating score to the city or affirm the existing rating out for these notes. And that really gives the market a view into the city's financials, their credit strengths and weaknesses, and kind of communicates the strong borrowing capacity and history of the city. We'll distribute the official statement on August 12th. That is really the prospectus, kind of, if you think about it, the private bond market. It is an open book. It incorporates audit results. It incorporates major employers, tax and assessment ratios, tax rates, large taxpayers, and all kind of the deep dive into the financial performance of the city and the reliability of its tax base. We will sell the notes the morning of August 19th, and forbidding that they are within the parameters, we'll designate the authority to speed toward those bids on that day. And then we are scheduled to close on September 10th, meaning the city will receive the funds in their bank account on September 10th. Our team is outlined here before. I am backed up. We have 2 representatives on every count, and then we have a public finance team that's working on the official statement on your behalf as well. I've included a number of charts within the pre-sale report. Table number 1 is just restating your 2026 capital improvement plan and all of the different projects and purchases that are included in this borrowing. So project costs of about $8.9 million overall. Table 2 is what we call the sources and uses of funds. There's cost of issuance built in. There's about $242,000 of cost of issuance related to borrowing the $8.9 million. There are LRS fees, there's bond counsel fees, disclosure counsel, which is also Quarles and Brady, rating fees, as well as this underwriter's discount. That is basically the underwriter's cut. This will be a moving number on sale date. Many times the underwriters don't take as much of a cut or quote unquote that we estimate within the sale, so that will most likely come down at the end of the sale. We do assume some interest earnings. It is my understanding the city intends to temporarily invest these funds with Ellers Investments. And so understanding that this is a very conservative interest earnings, really, and then we kind of downsize the borrowing, meaning we're going to account for you earning some money temporarily, and we're going to borrow less so that we don't overissue. But that is a very conservative estimate based off of the spend down schedule of the proceeds. And that's how we get to our $9,105,000. It's my understanding that you like to break these out kind of based off of the useful life of some of the assets that are being purchased with these. And so we amortize these on a 3, 10, and 20-year basis for those specific projects. But all of the debt will be repaid by the property tax levy. There are no other payment sources that would be paying for the debt. Table 3 is that amortization schedule outlined by levy years. And so there's a small portion being amortized over 3 years, a very small portion over 10 years, but the bulk of this will be amortized over 20 years, which is the maximum useful life that you can amortize general obligation debt over. And so for $9.1 million in total principal, it will result in about $4.1 million in interest. These are estimated interest rates based off of a similar rated recent sale, plus a conservative buffer of 50 basis points, which is 0.5%. And so we like to put these conservative estimates in there to really overestimate interest earnings to account for the volatility in the market. Market has actually stabilized in the last few weeks, and so we've seen rates come down. And so I do anticipate that we'll see some rates potentially lower than this. But given the volatility, we always want to be conservative in our estimates. The next chart gets a little small, but this takes a look at what the tax impact of the financing plan is. So moving from left to right in the blue, this is your existing debt profile, meaning this is the debt the city currently has on its books, with a net tax levy of net $4.9 million in 2026. This new debt will add about $500,000 to $700,000 in additional principal and interest payments over the life of the debt, resulting in a tax levy increase of about $729,000 for 2027 to support this debt before a lot of the city's debt starts to fall off. We will structure new debt in future years around this kind of falling off to flatline the tax levy as much as humanly possible. That results in about a $34 increase over what taxes would have been if you would have not taken this debt in 2027. And over the 20-year life of the debt, this financing plan on a $100,000 home costs an estimated $492 in total. And that is over the 20-year life of the debt. The next table takes a look at your general obligation debt capacity. State statute limits the authority of the city to borrow no more than 5% of its equalized value on an annual basis. Before the issuance of this debt, you remain at utilizing 39% of that debt capacity with a residual capacity of about $61 million. This debt will put you at 47% of that debt capacity with a residual capacity of $65 million, which will continue to grow as the equalized value of the city grows. We've projected that here moving forward based off of some conservative estimates, but understanding that as your value grows, your 5% grows, and we run this analysis annually when we start to structure the city's debt to ensure that it's in compliance with not only state statute, but the city's internal policies. And I know I flew through that pretty fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Gail? See any questions for you? The recommended action is to approve resolution 2026-20. And Mr. Coran, you have.
Motion to approve resolution 2026-20.
And Mr. Giles, you second that?
Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you, everybody.
Item O is the second reading of ordinance number 1546, amending Marshfield Municipal Code 8-111, regulation of bicycles, presented by Natasha Tompkins, District 3 Alderperson.
Thank you, Mayor. You will want to look at the ordinance that was handed out to you as paper, and Mr. Werman, that clean ordinance was an email from Steve, and I think the attachment was had labeled as clean. So this ordinance, again, is just modernizing the bike ordinance. It's cleaning it up significantly, shortening it, and aligning it with state statutes. We did take out, we had some feedback from people, so thank you for that. And we did take out anything related to the time of operation, since that's already covered in our curfew ordinance. And we did add in that no sidewalk operation of bikes on Central Avenue from Veterans to 7th Street.
Okay, Mr. Giles, you have a motion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 1546.
Mr. Fire, you second that? Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item P is a request to approve resolution number 2026-18, authorizing the execution of the Department of Natural Resources Principal Forgiven Financial Assistance Agreement, presented by Nicholas Cum, General Manager of Marshfield Utilities.
Thank you. Resolution 2026-18 requests Common Council approval to authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute a Wisconsin DNR Safe Drinking Water Loan Program Financial Assistance Agreement for our 2026 private side lead service line placement program. This request is similar to the request that we've made in previous years. Marshfield Utilities has been awarded up to $97,953 in funding through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program. The funding is provided at 100% principal forgiveness, meaning there's no repayment obligation for eligible project cost. These funds will allow us to replace approximately 16 private side lead water service lines this year, improving drinking water quality and helping reduce lead exposure in our community. The public side replacements will be completed concurrently using utility funds. The Utility Commission approved this resolution and the financial assistance agreement at its July 13th meeting and recommended forwarding both to the Common Council for approval. The recommended motion is to approve Resolution 2026-18 and authorize execution of the Wisconsin DNR Principal Forgiveness Financial Assistance Agreement.
Ms. Dallas, you have a motion.
My motion is to approve resolution number 2026-18.
And Mr. Cran, you second that?
I do.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman,
And that motion passes.
Thank you.
Item Q is a request to review funding plan for a larger garage space for the police department relocation and to authorize the added expense, presented by Jennifer Swansky, Finance. What would we do without computer?
All right, here we go. So at an earlier meeting, council passed a resolution or an order to increase the initial plans of our police department building for the additional size of the garage. So the top part of this is what is a schedule you've seen before, kind of a project status. What I've added to that is that $1.298 million garage addition, giving us a total project cost of $12,022,545. As far as funding, we will have $10.8 million in debt plus an $800,000 grant that we have received, leaving a gap of $422,545. Now, I do want to point out that this these expenditures can be addressed in our 2027 budget. We're not going to actually incur the whole project cost in 2026. So we have a little bit of time to kind of mix and match the capital stack here. But what we had talked about in a previous meeting was that we have some unallocated fund balance that resulted from prior years' sales of police vehicles, which we have about $60,000 there. We are also looking to repurpose the borrowing of one police vehicle to the garage project in our 2027 borrowing. That's roughly $75,000. I know that state bid hasn't come open yet, so that number could move just a little bit depending on what the actual cost of those cars come in. The other two possibilities that we can consider for this project would be a general fund transfer and a short-term borrowing through either the state trust fund loan or even a local bank could potentially beat those rates. But the point there that it would be a short term. Now, this is where we can mix and match. I just set up a model where we transfer $100,000 of our excess fund balance that we have been talking about and assume that we might borrow just under $188,000. This is just for illustrative purposes only. What payment schedule could look like if we took that loan out for 3 years, which would give us some time to get through the construction phase and some preliminary looks on how we might repurpose the existing police building. So it could look like this. The interest rate currently on a state trust fund loan is about 5.75%. Our first payment, it looked like it went monthly instead of yearly. I'm sorry, there's some bad numbers in there, but if we pretend that looks yearly, they're paid in each March for those. Now, some advantages of a state trust fund loan is there aren't any fees. When we go out to borrow notes, you just saw in Kayla's presentation, we have all sorts of rating fees and legal fees and financial advisor fees. We don't have that with a state trust fund loan. There's also the potential to pay it off early. And how we might build that early payment would be proceeds, future proceeds from additional police vehicles or even the sale of the building. If that were to happen, we could deposit those proceeds into the debt service fund and make a payment immediately on this loan with a 30-day notice. We could also decide as we get into 2027 that we really want to allocate not just the theoretical $100,000 that we would have, but maybe we want to do more given where we end our year in 2026. So we can decide to do that and then on 30 days notice, pay that off instead of paying it over that 20-year timetable that was illustrated earlier for you. As we are getting into the 2027 budget, we could decide to pay that $287,000 gap with just general fund reserves, given that we have that little bit of excess. But that's a decision that we can make as we go through the process itself. So with that, are there any questions in regards to how we might fulfill that gap?
Mr. Cran, you have a motion?
I do. Okay. My motion would be to authorize additional funding for the larger garage space as presented by Jennifer.
Mr. Kranz, you second that? Okay, Mr. Rigel, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I know we're not in the budget season yet, but it's right around the corner. Are we already anticipating cutting services this year as we've done in years past?
So the department budgets have not been submitted yet, so I can't speak to that.
Just a gut check. Long enough.
My guess is that there's an expansion of services going to be presented in some places, but we really haven't looked in detail.
So we're significantly better than we've been since I've been on council. Every year in October, we've been left and right. We're gonna be expanding them this year?
There's a possibility. I haven't seen them. We're just so early in that process.
Right. I guess my point was that it doesn't necessarily leave a great taste in my mouth that we're going to cut services elsewhere to make up this funding balance that we could have anticipated from the beginning. I know my colleague, Ms. Spiros, isn't here, but she'd be probably right next to me saying, it just, not that I'm opposed to it, but it still doesn't leave a great taste when we're here cutting services. We keep status quo. And
So when we look at our excess fund balance, how we want to spend that typically is on one-time things. Otherwise, if we are continuing to expand our operating, it's not going to be sustainable with that excess fund balance. We're going to run out faster than we can replenish it. So now that we've built up that excess, the ideal use of that is on one-time things. The garage would qualify as a one-time or unusual type item that, kind of think of it as the operating budget as separate. We're looking at current revenues to fund operating budget, not necessarily our savings from the past. Does that make sense?
No, like I said, once again, not that I'm strongly feeling one or the other, it's just sometimes hard to reconcile that. And we're just doing this because, once again, as Ms. Spears pointed out, as I pointed out too, I mean, this is something we could have anticipated from the beginning, and this doesn't leave a great taste in my mouth. But that's it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Thank you. Item R is a request to authorize an application under State of Wisconsin's Opportunity Zone 2.0 Economic Development Program, presented by James Levin, City Planner.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Tonight I'm bringing forward a nomination request for the Opportunity Zone 2.0 program, specifically for Census Tract 103, the corridor along Central Avenue running from East Ives Street south to roughly around 14th Street. Opportunity zones are a federal tax incentive program. Congress created them, the original version, in 2017. Last year, Congress made it permanent and restructured it under what's being called Opportunity Zone 2.0. A private investor with capital gains from selling a business, stock, or property can reinvest those gains into what's called a qualified opportunity fund that invests into a designated tract. In exchange, they can defer the taxes on those gains, reduce what's ultimately owed, and if they hold the investment long enough, avoid paying capital gains tax on new growth entirely, indefinitely. None of that benefit or money flows to the city directly, but it is a federal incentive aimed at pulling private capital into distressed areas. Every 10 years, the state nominates a limited share of their eligible low-income tracts. WEDC's application window for this cycle closes July 31st, this Thursday. So Tract 103 qualifies as a federal low-income community on its own, and it also qualifies for the rural area designation, which carries an enhanced benefit for investors. The tract doesn't currently sit inside any adopted redevelopment area or overlay district. The state ran its first round of these designations in 2018, and Marshfield had eligible tracts then, but the city didn't pursue one at that time. Beyond the basic eligibility criteria, WEDC hasn't published a detailed methodology for how it'll weigh competing nominations, so I can't tell you with certainty what puts one track ahead of another at this point. This is a chance to build opportunity zone status with the city's broader planning network going forward, rather than letting it stand apart from what we're already doing downtown. If the designation comes through, staff can fold it into the comprehensive plan update and the downtown overlay work already underway. Designation could also line up with other WEDC tools. The city was recently designated with an economically distressed community condition, and several WEDC grant programs reduce local match requirements or expand eligibility for projects that sit both inside an opportunity zone and a distressed community. The Idle Sites Redevelopment Program drops its minimum parcel size for opportunity zone sites and cuts required local match from 3-to-1 down to 1-to-1 for 50% for distressed communities. The Brownfield Grant Program and the CDI Vibrant Spaces Grant lists opportunity zones and distressed community status as qualifying factors as well. Stacked together, the city and TIF dollars go further on redevelopment in this quarter than they would otherwise. So authorizing this nomination doesn't rezone anything, doesn't commit city dollars, and doesn't create a binding obligation whatsoever. It's a request that the tract be considered for federal designation. If it's selected, the benefit goes to private investors who choose to fund projects here. Our role is to keep the tools ready we already have available and fold this into our broader planning framework as it develops. If authorized tonight, the application goes to WEDC on Thursday. WEDC and WEDA evaluate submissions. The governor actually nominates by September 28th. And if the Treasury designates the track, it takes effect January 1st, 2027 and runs through the end of 2036. This is a competitive process, and the state has far more eligible tracks than it can nominate, so selection isn't necessarily guaranteed. At this point, I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Tompkins, you have a moment.
My motion is to authorize an application for the state of Wisconsin's Opportunity Zone 2.0.
And Mr. Varsho, you second that?
Yes.
Okay, are there any comments, Ms. Della?
So I'm trying to get this straight and you kind of talk fast, so excuse me. So will this only be for this Central Avenue area, or does this cover all of Marshfield?
It covers Census Tract 3. So it actually cuts the southeastern half of Central Avenue, ranging from the south at 14th Avenue, going all the way up to Ive Street, and then roughly cutting across Brain Park and then cutting off at the high school. So it is a census tract I can share. It should have been in the email that was sent earlier this week, or I think it was yesterday. It should show the exact boundary of what's being discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Thank you, James. Item S is a request by Councilmember Tompkins for a report addressing service levels and budget needs for the Communications Department, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to begin by letting you know that Tom Laux, our Communications Director, who would normally be presenting this item, he's on vacation this week, so I'm doing it in his place. I want to thank Tom and his right-hand person, David, for all the great work they do. Noted earlier, I think by Matt when he was at the podium, to make our Communications Department successful. And I also want to thank the members of the Communications Committee, includes Councilmember Werman, others who've been here tonight, Matt, Cole, the rest of the committee. You guys do great work. I've come to a couple of your meetings, and you have a tough challenge in terms of trying to promote better communication in our city. This is in respect to a request made by Natasha at an earlier meeting, I think about maybe 4 weeks ago or so, asking for a couple things to be looked at, particularly the service levels being provided by our Communications Department and what that entails, what that looks like. What are we doing? What types of requirements does it have of staffing and resources? And how does that all break down as it has to do with putting information out to the public? The other part then has already been mentioned a couple times here tonight, looking ahead to the 2027 budget, and quite frankly, beyond 2027, the sustainability of the operation and how we move forward. So I'm going to start out by just talking about the service level piece. You've got the document in the packet from Tom with a very detailed look at a lot of things, heavily focused on a 3-tier system of what is considered to be the needs and the wants, if you will, of the operation. Tier 1 is the essential government services. These are things that Tom believes, and I agree with him, that no matter whatever else happens, we need to be doing. For the government side of our operation, make sure the public is informed, educated, and engaged by our Communications Department, getting them involved to be part of what we do, maybe join committees and commissions, maybe weigh in at meetings such as this, and understand their city government better. Second tier, dropping below that, is community engagement and education. These are important programs and activities that the department puts out there in various different ways of doing things, not just cable TV, obviously, but our website, Facebook, all the different platforms that we use to disseminate information. And then the third tier is community support and value-added services. And I think the thought there is that as you go from need down to want and below, these are the things we could perhaps do without, but they're good things for our community. They're things that are, again, enhance communicating and collaborating with our citizens and our stakeholders in the community to make this a better place to live, work, and play. I tend to think of this as a model, real briefly. Just think of yourself at home. I mean, you've got the things that you need to get done, the things you need to take care of. Then you got the things you'd like to do, and they're important. And then on down the line, the things that maybe are less necessary, but also positive for your family. Think of the same type of model here for our Communications Department in our city. After that, the remainder of the document goes through a number of things. You see it on the cover sheet of his memo, analyzing the workload and the staffing analysis. It all plays into what it takes, how many hours of Tom and David's time to accomplish the various tasks before them. And then we talk about funding analysis, which I'll get into in a minute, and so on down the line. I want to step forward now and talk about the 2027 budget. There's been talk about it at this meeting already, previous meetings. it's a challenge. There's going to be some work that's going to have to be done to find the sweet spot, not only for this year, but going forward. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the franchise fees we get from Charter Communications have been dropping. I think many of us in city government, and I've been in government a long time, local government, have waited for this day to come for a long time. Here in Marshfield, we got roughly $250,000 a year, $250,000 a year coming from the Charter franchise fee. They pay us 5% on certain services. But then you wonder, as the subscribers to Charter drop a little bit because of streaming services and other opportunities that customers have, would that fee slowly go down? And it has. Initially, it was made up in part by the state of Wisconsin, who said, okay, we're going to say that Charter only has to pay 4%, for example. Not only Charter, but other companies that pay franchise fees. They pay 4% instead of 5%, and the state will make up the difference. So immediately, where it looked like $250,000 coming to the city of Marshfield from Charter, it went to be more like $200,000 from Charter and roughly $50,000 coming from the state of Wisconsin to make up that gap and make us whole. But as Charter has continued, the franchise fees have continued to drop, that 1% payment, if you will, being made by the state has remained right around $49,000, but the total revenue we've gotten has definitely fallen. For example, in 2024, we had about $193,000 coming in from franchise fees. The expectation for 2027 is 136. That's a cut of roughly, 30% or thereabouts from a 3-year period. So what does that mean? That means that we have to try and figure out either how to get more revenue to keep the model going the way we've been at, or we need to cut expenses. So if you look at the estimated gap for last year, it turned out to be around $15,000, which we made up with general fund reserves. The general fund paid $15,000 into the 2026 budget. If you look at it the way it stands right now for 2027, that would go up to $98,000. That's in large part because of a 40-something thousand dollar gap or drop in the franchise fee, and then added expenses, additional health insurance costs and the like, brought it up to nearly $100,000. So the question then becomes, how do we trim the budget? Let's say we focus on the expense side. Well, as is the case with the entire city budget as a whole, we talk about every year in October here and during other times of the year, we are a service-based business. We don't make a product. So if you look at the private sector, you might say, well, staffing, wages and benefits are up to 45%. Boy, what's going on here? For us to be around 2/3 is pretty normal because our product is the police officer who comes out to your home, the building inspector who goes up to the site. It's services, it's not manufacturing. Same is it true in the communications department, where the wages and benefits of the 2 employees makes up roughly 2/3 of the budget, leaving the other 1/3 for supplies, equipment, and so forth, making it difficult to find ways to trim the expense side of the budget. And we're looking at them. I've been talking to Tom about them, and he's certainly working on them as well. On the revenue side is where I think the sustainability has to come into play. Initially, can we look at more general fund contribution or more contribution from the 235 fund, the fund balance that a cable TV or the communications function has? It's been dwindling. I think right now it's around 40,000 or 45,000, but we've been going through it lately to meet that gap, to keep things balanced on the annual budget. So we're about to run out of that, as you can tell. 40-some thousand dollars or whatever it is won't even cover the deficit we're talking about tonight. So we've got to find a more sustainable model. So there's a short-term challenge, I think, as we look at the 2027 budget, but there's a longer-term sustainability challenge. Does it involve more of a commitment by the council in the annual budget process to greater use of general fund to fund our communications department? I think that could be part of the picture, but certainly not the whole picture. Tom has been working really hard, along with David, to find ways to maybe get other revenue from other type sponsorships for projects we do in programming and some other things, but they tend to make up in the $3,000 to $5,000 to $7,000 category total, nowhere near tens of thousands of dollars. So I can tell you, you're probably wondering if people like myself and our finance director, Jennifer, and Tom and others have been talking about this because you've seen it building for a while. The answer is yes, we've been talking about it, but there's no silver bullet at this point, absent more general fund contribution, because we don't have the bandwidth to do great expense reduction unless we're going to, in fact, trim staffing. And we don't seem to have a whole lot of other revenue options that are going to produce tens of thousands of dollars. So I know this is not the report you wanted to hear as we get ready to talk about the budget in the next few weeks. It is a challenge. More general fund money is going to be needed in the picture, but again, it's not the sole answer to where operations are going for the future. And we need to come up with a longer term solution for funding the operation that everybody can buy into. So that's the report. You get the service levels. You had a chance hopefully to read through what's provided, what are the things we do, how much staff time and resources does it take, and then that's the overall budget picture. We don't see franchise fees going up anytime soon. In fact, if anything, it will probably continue to drop as people find other avenues other than charter communications for their communication services that they are now procuring. It's a lot of information, but with that, I take any questions, comments, or suggestions. I put this on the agenda tonight for discussion of the council. You could certainly make a motion to try and move us in some particular direction if you feel so led, or let this be the first dialogue of the weeks to come in terms of how to fill the gap.
Ms. Tompkins.
So I think that we have two questions that we need to look at. The first is, what services do we want the citizens of Marshfield to have from communications? And I would like to look at that question tonight, because I don't think staff can adequately ask the question of how much money this department uses in the budget until council gives direction on what kind of services we want this department to give. So I think that's where staff needs direction from us. I don't want us not to be a part of that process. And I feel like we could lead that discussion as representatives of the people and what we think people want to hear. So I just have a few comments. One is, first of all, this was a great presentation from Tom. It really was clear about both how many hours and what services are provided. It looks like Tier 1 with 75 to 85 hours per week projected to complete Tier 1 is 2 FTEs. I don't know how we could even say that we want 2 or 3. But I would ask everyone to go to page 285 in our packet. And of course, my computer just went out. 285 is what would we do if we had the ifs and the thens, which was super helpful for me. And if you go down to moderate budget reductions are necessary or significant budget reductions are necessary, I don't know where a $98,000 deficit, if that's considered a moderate budget reduction or a significant, but it's definitely, we're in a zone of, below crisis, but we're definitely in a hard zone. So if it's moderate budget, then what Tom, as the director of the department, is proposing is that we still have Tier 1 services, and then they would do Tier 2 to see if those could fit in. And I think those would be like social media, the newsletter that comes out on people's phones and to their emails. If we're in the significant budget zone, then that means we do Tier 1, but we eliminate all of Tier 3 and only before we even, well, I guess they're considering Tier 2. So I would like there, if possible, just hear the council of what you guys want for services, what you think is important. I think we as a council need to communicate that before the budget season comes.
Yeah, thank you. I want to commend you on that comment. I think that's exactly where it's at. It's about service levels, and that's where this body needs to weigh in.
Mr. Werman, you're up next.
Thank you. So on the communications committee, we've been talking about this for a while, and I think Natasha's kind of nailed it, but I want to almost challenge the thought even a little bit more. One of the things that we've discussed a lot lately is that this seems to kind of fall almost more into 2 different categories than just tiers. We have communications and we have Marshfield Broadcasting. One thing that we've talked about is just that separation in general, and as a committee, I know that we believe that it would make the most sense if communications, specifically Tom's role, was brought into the city budget as a staff member versus funding through these franchise fees, and that broadcasting would continue to fund through that. Now, I don't know how something like that works, but the more we've talked about it, the more logical it seems, because if you were to just take a look through this tiered list, and I don't know who was able to look at the pre-work, unfortunately for everyone else, I kind of got to cheat a little bit and look at this during the communications meeting before we got to this meeting. So I've seen this, I've looked it over multiple times, and I think the thing that we don't think about as a council is that communications is doing stuff that is far beyond just communicating. For example, I think most people associate the owning of a website with IT. Our communications department owns our city website here. So just as an example, if that department were to tank, I mean, that's one thing that we would have to immediately figure out who's going to own this now, who's going to own the content, the updating, who's going to own the submissions of that. There's also emergency services communication. People get the newsletter. I mean, there's a lot in here that would fall on somebody down the line. And if we are already struggling with things like that, for an actual department to own it, imagine how much harder it's going to be if other departments have to absorb that. And I think that's where we need to start thinking is, how do we split this to get to the point where communications is owned by the city as it was intended, and broadcasting is funded by the franchise fees, that's where we have a little bit of wiggle room and a little play to say, what can we do with those two roles kind of being a split thing, and now having different funding sources, and then looking at what our services could be. So I was actually going to propose that we should have an alternate budget scenario where we come back with if Tom's role was absorbed into our budget for next year, what does that look like for us, and where does that funding come from finance before we get into budget, which is kind of what I alluded to with my council comment earlier on in the night.
Yeah, there's really an argument to be made about that, and I know Thomas talked with me about that before, Derek. In fact, we've worked with the finance department, the last budget, to show what that would look like. And the breakdown between the so-called public side with government, I should say the government side, and the public side is about 50-50. So, the budget, I think last year was around 260 or something. It was about 130 each side. And, and you could look at it that way in terms of how the franchise fees are used. And I know Thomas showed me that other communities, at least some other communities in the state, do fund the communication side in their general fund. So I think the challenge for us is to show what that would look like. But then again, you guys have been through the budget, most of you in this room right now, annually know what it looks like. So it's a matter of where to come up with the funds. If you want to do that kind of model, from the general fund, how to make room for that to be the approach. Because right now, I know what Jennifer and I are going to be looking at in a week or so when these budgets all come in from the department heads is going to make that difficult at best. But it's a model that has merit.
Mr. Corral.
Out of curiosity, all departments within the city benefit from our communications department. Is there any sense in having some of these departments help offset the cost of communications because they all benefit from it? Kind of like a 701 fund for communications where we pay into, each department for using equipment pays into this fund?
I think for budgetary reasons, that would show that they're beneficiaries of the services of the department. In terms of the overall effect on the general fund, though, I mean, it's going to come from the same pot. So if the engineering department and all the different departments pay more to offset that cost, it's still going to end up being a total amount that we have to pay for the service.
Right, but they might have to reallocate some of their own budgets to pay for communications because there's a benefit to them because of it.
So not adding to their budget, but
not adding,
reallocating within their.
Correct.
Okay. Anything's possible. I mean, I certainly can't rule that out.
Is that all, Scott? Ms. Dills.
To add to what Scott was just asking, can't we do that same concept with Visit Marshfield, Mackey, Main Street, the Central Wisconsin State Fair, all these other little groups that are utilizing them for promotional and whatever to start billing them for the services that we're using? And on that note, I'm under the impression that we have I don't have all the details, so Derek, if you know more about this, please help me out. There is a program that people can submit what's going on in Marshfield to the communication department and it gets spread across all, like, the channels that we use? Derek, am I right?
Yeah, it's a system that David could probably present more on, but I'm guessing he's running the camera tonight. I think Tom's out, if I remember correctly. And I forget exactly what it's called, but I think we categorized it under the broadcasting group, and I could be mistaken. I'm looking right now to see if I can find the specific name of it, but yes, you're not wrong. It is something where citizens can actually submit things through a service that would then be able to be published if it meets certain criteria within the system, like I think it has to be written a certain way or something like that. And then there's a disclaimer that would basically say this is not the belief of Marshfield or anything like that. So yes, yeah, you are 100% correct.
Okay, and then also that there is one for different groups in the city that have a specific login that they were test running on one department. And I'm not 100% sure about this, but I don't know the specifics. I just hear about, like, one department I know was testing it, and then another department, when I asked them about it, said, oh, we didn't get our login yet because they're still running this. But can't we charge some of these other, because again, it's a Mackey Main Street visit, Central Wisconsin State Fair, these people could get a login. And I mean, we're talking the senior community center, people, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of groups out there, and start charging them for logging in and promoting because it does go to every platform that we use.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that plan myself, but I will go back to where you started. We need to be charging for our services, and Tom and I have talked about this quite a bit. I know he's been working on programs he's done for Mackey and others, where we used to do it at no charge, and now we're charging them for our time. And even if it's only $500 or $1,000 or whatever it is based upon whatever time it takes, we're recouping our cost and making sure that they're paying for the time and resources involved with our operation. And, you look at that, what does it produce? Maybe it produces 2,000 here, 3,000 here. But it does reflect the fact that we're not giving away our services. And we definitely are grateful for our partners. But again, if they're using our time and services, we ought to be recouping money for it. I want to go back, if I can, briefly to what Councilmember Crayon said a minute ago too. I think this goes back to what Councilmember Tompkins said. If you decide the level of service you want, and then if in fact that suggests we need to find more resources to make this work, then you're going to be making those decisions. Like you might be saying to one of the departments sitting out here being represented, you're going to have to cut your budget by $5,000 or $7,000 to make room for a contribution to the communications effort. It's a trade-off. What are they giving up for the cut they're making in terms of what they need to do in their departments? But you'd be doing it based on the idea that you think there's a greater good. Those are the kind of service level analysis you have to decide where to take this. Because there's going to be a cost somewhere. The money isn't going to fall out of trees. And that's where we end up otherwise.
Mr. Rigel.
Thank you. Just one thing I'll point out, I'm not going to dwell on this, but based on this report here, if they're doing tier 1, 2, and 3, they're putting 180 hours a week, which is just not possible. So they might want to take a look at that before it gets to the budget part there and tighten that up a bit. And just confirm in my head here, you said roughly about 98,000 we have to come up with?
That's the current gap as it sits today.
Okay. I know Mr. Warman kind of mentioned this, and I know, throughout my time on council too, Mr. Laux has brought this up too. This was not a surprise. We saw this coming. And I'm assuming that we've looked into other options, and it's just, this is the last option that we have here because we're not going to bridge that 98,000 with fees here and there or something like that. So I guess I'd support what Mr. Warman said, and let's try to get a budget, or was Ms. Thompson, I'm not sure which, but let's get a budget presented with it in there and without it, and see if we can fit it in. But like I said, I think we get the budget season now, I'd tighten this presentation up a little bit.
Yeah, right now, the estimate I saw is like about 287,000 of expenses and 189 in revenue. That's where the 98 comes from currently. And like I said, I may be wrong, but the things that Councilmember Dallas is talking about, and I totally agree, are probably going to add up at most to maybe $10,000, $12,000, which we need to do. We need to recoup from people using our services, but there just aren't other revenue sources we're aware of that will make up the difference at this point, apart from finding ways to deal with it internally.
Ms. Tompkins.
So just in light of giving some direction to the communications department, I would make a motion that the council would approve maintaining Tier 1 services whenever possible, reducing or eliminating Tier 3 services before considering any Tier 2 reductions. And if that motion passes, I would ask that Mr. Laux again does a presentation to clearly define what that would be and what services that would be.
Mr. Cran, you second that?
I do.
Okay, and did you have further comment? Either of you? Okay. Oh, Mr. Rago.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
So the motion would be reading off of page 285. And it would be that the communications department would maintain Tier 1 services whenever possible, reduce or eliminate Tier 3 services before considering any Tier 2 reductions.
Okay, I kind of take a little exception with the Tier 1, 2, and 3 there, because I think the nuances there, you know, were put out there, but I think they can be discussed further, or some things that might be considered Tier 2 might be 1 and vice versa, or Tier 3. So I don't know if we want to give them that much direction. I think I'd be more comfortable with getting a budget proposal with the full funding in there, one without it, to see if we can accomplish that. Because I got a feeling that once you get down and look at it in more nuance, there'll be certain things that as a council we see, okay, this is definitely Tier 3, but they're considering Tier 1, or just a reshuffling of it. And without having a more full-fledged discussion of what's in Tier 1, 2, and 3, I hesitate to say, okay, this Tier 1, 2, and 3 is good. Because if we approve it now, fast forward 2 months in October, we're not going to be revisiting it. I think we probably should revisit it prior to that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Is everyone clear on the motion, or do we have to read?
Can you see me? I lost video of you guys, but I have my hand up. I can't see you guys.
Okay, go ahead, Derek.
Sorry. So for further discussion, I kind of agree with Andy. I don't dislike the motion here. I just don't know that it benefits us as much. I think the benefit of the tiered list is really just to kind of emphasize what communications and broadcasting is really doing, how they're separated. I don't think that it's a negative, in terms of if we were to try to vote on that. But I think at the end of the day, I think we still don't really know financially what impact we're going to have there. And I think that's part of the problem is we really need to know where that funding is coming from and how we're going to fund it in general before we decide any services, I think is my big call out here. I'm not going to say I disagree with the motion. I just don't know that it's going to be the right solution in this instance. I think a better idea would be if we were to go back with those alternates for funding, how we would look at funding this in the future with a couple of alternate plans. And I actually would agree with Mr. Cran's comments earlier about maybe we do a secondary alternate as well. We do an alternate where Tom is absorbed within the city budget somehow, and we do an alternate where a portion of each department's budget goes towards funding the communications of the city into specifically the communications portion, right? The Tier 1, 2s, and 3s of communications. So I think that would better benefit us. If we decide to move forward with this motion, that's fine. I just don't know that I think it's the right solve in this instance.
Ms. Tompkins, you have further.
What you guys are saying, that's sort of confusing. So I will withdraw the motion, but I would highly recommend that someone else have some sort of motion, whether it be asking communications to bring forth a plan with funding or something that will happen before October.
Okay. We no longer have a motion unless somebody else wants to make a motion. Mr. Rigel.
Can I make two separate motions? To avoid a compound one? Or should I need to do one, then do another?
One at a time.
Okay. I'd move to have, how do I phrase this? I move to have a budget presented with absorption of the full funding, then one with partial funding, then with no funding of the communications department into the general, not the general, but the budget.
So three?
Yes.
Did I hear that right? Three.
Correct, three.
Mr. Giles, you second that?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Do I still have the floor here, quick? Okay, there we go. The next motion would be I'd move for the communications department to bring us back another report like this, but with some more numbers attached to it so we can better digest what the cost is for each portion of it.
Ms. Dallas, you second that? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Anything further on this topic, since it's up for the discussion of the council? I don't see anything, so we'll move on. Item 10 is a request by council members Varsho and Coran to review the city of Wausau camping ordinance and to discuss whether to adopt a similar ordinance for the city of Marshfield. Presented by Brian Varsho, council member District 4. Brian.
Thank you. Within the last couple months, I've been getting complaints and calls daily regarding citizens sleeping in their cars, sleeping in their campers, sleeping in other vehicles on the side of the roads, in front of properties, on city parking lots. So after a discussion with the police chief, trying to figure out if there was any ordinance or rules or any type of things that prohibits citizens from sleeping in their car, camper, or other vehicle while they are parked on city streets. We didn't have anything that we knew of in Marshfield, but Wausau did have a camping ordinance to give a definition of what camping is and where it can be done. After that, Mr. Barr did get us a copy of the Fond du Lac ordinance as well. So what I am is bringing this to you as a council with the two ordinances there and wondering if you would like to move forward to create an ordinance in Marshfield as well.
Mr. Coran.
I too received several complaints, and I would like to make a motion to direct city staff to create an ordinance under basically using the Fond du Lac ordinance as a template and hopefully come forward in a meeting very soon.
Ms. Dallas, you second that? Okay, any discussion on that? Mr. Rigel.
So this is a homeless ordinance, right?
Nope.
It's not? I mean, we can call it what we want.
Microphone, please.
It's a camping ordinance to define the term of camping and where it is legal and prohibited to be camping overnight in your vehicle, camper, or RV.
I was just reading the memorandum that was prefacing both of these ordinances that referred to that, which is what it is. And so to me, it seems a little bit like a bait and switch. We present a camping one, but we say it's, at the impetus of homelessness. And I don't know if this would necessarily be what solves the problem. If someone is camping in their car, vehicle, whatever it may be, they're probably down on their luck, and us slapping a fine on them probably is not gonna do much more than that.
Mr. Kranz, you're.
So, this isn't an ordinance about homelessness. This is an anti-camping ordinance. This is also more than that. It's giving our police department tools in order to remedy issues, being proactive instead of reactive on issues that are presenting themselves. I can understand where you're coming from, but also right now, people can park in front of someone's house for 2 months and camp. And the police department, there is nothing they can do. There are people, they're down on their luck, and you're correct, but there's nothing in our ordinances that can provide help for them. They can't be put into the system. If they have mental health issues, they can't be put into the system to maybe get mandated court help. Not saying that this is a remedy, but I think this is the first step into solving an issue that a lot of residents are having. We've had residents not residents, these are just, people coming into town, staying at the zoos, staying in front of the police station, staying in front of people's houses. There's a lot of issues with this. So this is just giving our police department a tool to help remedy an issue where they can use their own discretion. I think our police department has shown great integrity and can use their best judgment on issues like this. This isn't a across the board solution to anything, but this is a tool for them to start this process.
Mr. Kranz.
Thank you. Thank you. I did have a follow-up with Councilman Reigel's comment here regarding homelessness. I do agree that the police need to have a little bit more power, and perhaps per ordinance, to do something about, say, homelessness. So if somebody's homeless, is there a place that they could legally stay according to this ordinance? Or, would the police have the ability to remove them and offer services? Can you explain that to me, please?
Is there someone over here?
Under the Fond du Lac ordinance, they have to be provided notice. And their last paragraph of their statement is to provide, I don't have it, it's basically notice, give them due process, notification to move. It's not an immediate, you have to leave this area. And in the hopes, in that circumstance, depending on what's actually happening, the police can use their best judgment to decide, whether a citation needs to be issued in order to move, anything like that.
Well, as Mr. Reigel said, I don't think it's going to be prudent to give a citation or something to somebody that is homeless. I'm in agreement. The police need a little bit more power to rectify this problem. It's a city blight problem. But I think we need to make sure that we're still, if somebody is homeless, still protecting their rights. I don't know where they could legally camp or stay. And it's a dilemma, but I'm not sure how the ordinance would cover or rectify that, but I would agree to give the police more discretion about either removal. I'm not sure about that, again, the fine or is going to rectify that at all. So I think services, a lot of times, whether it's mental health services or drug rehabilitation services, is often one of the common problems in homelessness. So I would just defer to others to make comments and say, okay, well, is this really worth putting it in the ordinance? Does it really give the police the power to take appropriate action? That's all.
Just going back to the earlier comment, I just want to make it known that our police department has, I think, done a very good job over time, and there's others probably involved, United Way. We'd love to help people find temporary or longer term, places for them to reside. But ultimately, I think the issue that brought this about in Wausau and Fond du Lac, and that's being talked about here, this idea of camping out on public streets and those kind of things, is related but separate in a sense, whether or not that's something the city is going to allow to occur.
Mr. Werman.
Thank you. I can actually see both sides of this. I think Mr. Rigel makes some very good points here. I know it was brief, but I think I had the same feeling. I'm pretty sure, I think the entire council or close to it was contacted by the same individual about the same instance. And I will say in my 3 years going on 4 years of council, it's the only complaint I've heard about anything in regards to homelessness, activities such as this. The side I'll play on this is that right now we're not authorizing anything to happen except for a draft of a policy. And I'm okay supporting that because I don't think it's bad to explore. But I do think this is a very slippery slope. My concern here is that we are compounding a problem. If homelessness is a real problem here and we think that we're going to solve it with a camping policy, we are just adding another problem on top of a problem. We don't have the infrastructure to take people in and house them. We had a homeless shelter and it did not go well, unfortunately, and now we have no resources for those people. But I mean, if you look at our current police building, and yes, we're building a new one, but like we don't have a jail that we can bring people into if they violate these policies. We don't have a garage we can bring their personal possessions to that's going to house everything if we have that much of a problem that we need to draft a policy for this. Again, gray area. That's where I don't think having something in writing gives us a little bit more leg to stand on. I think anybody on that council would probably feel the same way if some random person they didn't know was camped out on their street in a vehicle, sleeping in it, which was the instance that was referenced here. I think it would make people a little uncomfortable, like, who is this and why are they here? But again, I don't think we're looking for a solution here. I think we're just compounding a problem, and I can't support that. So if we're going to come back with a policy, I would like it to be very clear what the expected punishment would be if you violate said policy. And I think that we as a council need to do a better job of looking for a solution than just drafting a policy that's going to affect apparently multiple people in what I would consider a negative way.
Mr. Ryan.
If we do move forward with this, you guys probably already know how I'm voting, but if this does move forward, I'd like to see the police department bring forward some actual numbers with this. Number of instances have been called for camping or homelessness, and then the number of individuals. Thank you.
And I just want to add that I look back at my memo while we were talking here, and I did use the word homeless. I didn't really intend to do that. I intended to just use the reference from these two ordinances in terms of what type of situation they're trying to address, and that is the use of public property in the way that's referenced.
Ms. Tompkins.
I would just suggest that in the draft, there is clarity about how long someone could sleep in their vehicle for. Is it 5 nights is okay? Is when someone's been there for 3 weeks, is that a problem? It would be good to have a little bit of parameters.
Anything further from anyone? The motion is to have city staff, oh, Derek, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, is if we could just repeat the motion one more time so we're clear.
Yeah. Jessica.
To direct city staff to work to develop an ordinance based on the Fond du Lac example.
Okay. All those in, or please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
That motion passes. Item U is a response to a request by Councilmember Kranz to reevaluate the process for residents to secure approval for on-street parking, presented by Steve Lark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to turn this over to Councilmember Kranz in just a minute, but I just thought it's been a couple months, so I thought it'd be worthwhile for me just to outline how we got here. Under items for future agendas, back at the end of May, he had asked for an agenda item on the city's overnight on-street parking regulations. As I recall, specifically his concern was for residents who don't have a garage or driveway on their properties, therefore lack a place to keep their vehicles off the street. And of course, I'm going to talk about in a minute that really comes into play mainly in certain months of the year. And that is the winter months of November to April. Permission can be given by the police department to park a vehicle on the street overnight in special circumstances. But as I understand it, and I have talked to the police department again on this, this is intended for a limited period of time, not as a general ongoing practice. The reason for the requirement is basically to provide for effective snow removal. And as a result, when overnight parking permission or will not be granted, usually when snow events are anticipated overnight. But with that in mind, I'd like to turn over to Councilmember Kranz and let him maybe elaborate or really hit more on what he's after.
Thank you so much, Dave. I would like to really defer to you and the police department on this as well. And yes, I'm referring to the winter months when people that are, like if I have a guest staying over and they're parking on the street, they have to call in to get permission. Obviously, this doesn't apply when there's a snow removal or snow emergency because they must be off. But I do have, I have one particular, I have more than one, but I have one particular neighbor and constituent that comes to mind. It's trying to get a driveway, but he doesn't have a driveway or or a garage. And I was thinking it would be easier if we could have residents could apply for a parking permit during those winter months. So they don't have to keep calling every day the city for get permission overnight. I mean, obviously it's going to be strict, it's going to be regulated and people, they're going to have to give ID and everything just as normal. But I think it would be helpful to people that don't have the garage or driveway instead of having to go into a city parking lot, especially during winter months. So the rest of it, I really defer to you and the police department because I think that having to call in every night during the winters is not the best solution. So I defer to you and the police department. Thank you.
Ms. Dillon.
I have a question for Jody, if you don't mind, please, Chief. Of course. Thanks. How many calls do you get regarding an issue like this during the winter months?
Me, not so many anymore. I work during the daytime, but at nighttime we get quite a bit. During the winter months, we get quite a few. Logistically, to have a permit is pretty difficult for us to do because weather changes quickly. As far as the police department is concerned, we really don't care about parking in the street. As far as our operations, as long as we can get emergency vehicles through the street. So there's some areas that have parking limited on one side or whatnot. That's really the only thing that the police department would have, but the street department is a different story. So there are still some logistical problems with them for cleaning the streets with the street sweepers and things like that, which causes issues. And winter is obviously, it can change so quickly. So the permit would be very, very hard to logistically handle on the street. In parking lots, city lots, then it's a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Can I ask, does your department get those random calls where someone says, hey, look, my car is on the street, it's the battery's dead or whatever? It's
Absolutely.
Take a couple days, but it's usually for a limited time period.
Yep. We usually only give a one night permission. If they have family that's staying over Christmas, then we ask that they call every night. A lot of that is because we're going to have different people working our rotations. So we want to make sure that they're aware. And there's still mistakes made. Sometimes we still give a ticket and we got to fix that. So.
Are there any further questions for the chief or for anyone else? Mr. Rigel.
I think I'm speaking more tonight than I have my entire time on council. No, I am. Can you explain to me the difficulties of a permit? Like, what are the challenges with it?
It's not getting the permit, it's if we give somebody a permit to park on the street, then it would be on us to go find them when we have a snow event, or it would give them that permission. So logistically and enforcing it, it becomes difficult on the street. In the lots, we have a permit that's in their window that we can see that they're permitted. So that's where the logistics come in.
And the city sweeping that you mentioned too, that needs to,
Right.
and maybe not at an announced schedule, so, okay.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
We've tried other systems in the past. We've had the odd even, and it just became so confusing that it was really difficult.
Okay, thank you.
This is at the discretion of the council, so unless I see something else, we'll move on. Mr. Warman. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
It's okay. I don't know if this would be a question for HAP. I'm curious what the liability of something like that would be. Obviously, when we have like a snow emergency, you know, there's stuff like that in the middle of the night that people aren't getting up and moving their vehicles. I'm just kind of curious if there's like city liability because we allowed them to park there and then like a car gets hit, you know, by the plow or something.
Okay, so I've mentioned a number of times, the idea that there's actual liability is one thing compared to the possibility that you get sued. So we are always exposed to getting sued. I rate the liability, likelihood of actually being stuck with liability as fairly limited in regard to that. This is, again, starting off, we're having a discussion at a legislative level, right? We're talking as a governing body over whether we should do this, and you're making decisions about how to deal with even economic problems and fair treatment of people at specific socioeconomic levels, et cetera. So those are the kinds of things that there's going to be a fair amount of legislative discretion granted to you to allow those things to happen. So the only thing I'll say, and Jody kind of talked about some of the complexities, once you say you're going to do something, and I'll use the best, easiest example, and there's been tremendous amount of litigation that I've been involved in multiple times, and that is, there's nothing that leaves you with liability if you choose to put up a stop sign or not, okay? So if the body says we're gonna put one up on 5th and Central, and we do or don't, there's nothing that can come out of that because it was a decision that was made at a legislative level. But if we make that decision and say we're going to, and then there's a delay in doing it because the street department's overworked, then we have a problem because it was a ministerial task that we should have taken responsibility for and acted on quickly. So when you go down and you start doing these types of regulations, you have to be a little bit careful that you don't kind of pass it on to the next level of that consideration. So one thought that I had when Jody was talking about, you know, if you say somebody's going to do that and then you have a snowstorm and you have to chase somebody down or to, you know, notify them that their car's going to get moved or bumped or something like that, now you start creating complexity by carving out these kinds of exceptions that then become ministerial tasks that somebody has to run down. That changes that dynamic a little bit. But for the most part, I stand on the opinion that you're not going to be liable for making a decision over whether we're going to go one way or another on something like this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I had a similar thought of like having to chase people down and then certain areas, you know, I didn't know if it becomes not discriminatory, but are we going to have to over-police this in order to like have certain boundaries? Like, well, this street, it's okay, but these streets are too tight to do it, and so on and so forth. And you're right. I think you've kind of given that similar explanation before. It's really not a great council meeting unless you get a chance to talk. So I appreciate it.
Mr. Curran.
I'm wondering if it would make sense to table this at this time, have Streets Department come in, have Tim make a presentation, because I think some of us we may know part of the job that Streets does, but from tree trimming to other issues in the area that might affect this, it would be nice to have their perspective because they're the ones that are gonna have to work around this. And then forever and a day ago, when I served on a parking committee in the city of Marshfield, we did free parking at one of the lots, and we had a car basically, I believe it was a disabled car, sit there forever. So there's always an unintended consequence to it, to an action. So if we allow parking without phone calls, if something sits there and all of a sudden it can't be moved for, emergency services, can't be moved for snowplow, it presents other issues. So it would be nice to kind of refresh those notes. I'm sure I have them somewhere, or I think Justin Casperson served on that committee with us. And maybe we could put our heads together and find out what are some of the other issues with it as well.
And Mr. Cran.
Yes, thank you everyone for your comment, especially Police Chief, the Police Chief. Given all the comments, I'm going to withdraw my, request or consideration for this, for the parking permit. And thank you again.
Okay, seeing nothing further, we'll move on to item V. Down there. Response to request by Councilmember Rigel for an update on the issue of permanent restroom facilities at Wenzel Family Plaza, presented by Steve Bard, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this topic's obviously been around a long time. Those of you who've been on the council for several years know that. I'm not going to go through the day-by-day or week-by-week history, just touching on how we got to this point a little bit. The thought came up about maybe needing public restrooms for the Wenzel Family Plaza for the concerts and other activities. And truthfully, I know there's been some criticism in the past. Why didn't this come out back in 2016, 2017, or whenever it was that the plaza was first put together that we had permanent restrooms for that purpose? But anyway, discussion went forward. We actually did end up putting for $250,000 in the capital improvement plan back in 2023. The intent was $185,000 of that would come from the 205 Economic Development Fund, and the other 65 from room tax monies. Subsequently, we did end up going out to try and bid out the project. We did have a project on the docket for putting permanent restrooms on the, I believe it was like the northeast side roughly of the facility, the property. That was ultimately not accepted by the council after a lot of discussion. Other discussions went on at that time about maybe could we contract with an adjacent business along the west side of Central Avenue to lease out back of their building, some sort of arrangement where we could have access for public restrooms for people using the plaza. And from that, in the August of 2024, we actually started a committee, a 9-member committee to look at the options, whether or not we would look at on-site, off-site, or what might be the best approach. And the committee actually only met once, and I apologize for that. What happened during the fall of 2024, we did have 3 people leave the committee. One, a member of this own body who actually passed away, and then 2 others who took other jobs and were no longer representative of why they were put in the committee. And then the committee just didn't meet for a while, kind of struggled a little bit. There've been a lot of conversations off and on by this body as to what to do. But in the late summer of 2025, a year ago, the council did vote to repurpose the idea of the $250,000 that had been slated to be in the CIP for a project like this and transfer it, so to speak, if you will, to Brame Park for the improvements going on there that have been planned with respect to softball field, pavilion, and all those kind of things, and use it for the improvement of that park. And I appreciate Councilmember Rigel bringing this up because it's never had a conclusion. It's never had a finality to where we're going with this. I did try earlier this year, probably 3-4 months ago, had some conversations with Carter Howell from Main Street Marshfield because some of the representatives we wanted were from the business community. And right now, I believe I have 5 people who said that they would serve on the committee. But of the original 9, only 3 are around in the same position, and they are 3 of the people that would be on this committee. So we could reduce the size of the committee and continue. We could get back and meet. But before I schedule a meeting, I really wanted to have a heart-to-heart with this body about where you want to take this, because the funding, there is no funding there right now of any kind for this. It doesn't mean it couldn't be resurrected to be funded in some way. But whether you talk permanent bathrooms or whether you talk about leasing the back of a commercial establishment, at this moment, there's nothing in the budget. And the way the 2027 budget's looking, it's hard to picture as well. Although if it's a priority of this body, we can certainly discuss it. So I want to hear what your heart is from this group tonight. Yes, I can get the 5 people together that have agreed to participate. And we can start discussing again what the options are and come back to this body with a recommendation. But I don't want to have people meeting for the sake of meeting and find out that there was never any energy for the idea of spending public money at this point to try and take on one of the options. So I just put it out there for your discussion and any direction you might give me tonight.
Mr. Werman, you were up first.
I don't know that Parks would have this info handy. I think we've gone 2 summers now without fully discussing this. I think Andy and I think our first year on the council, this was a hot topic that summer, and then it kind of went away. A lot of back and forth that year, and the next summer, I don't think we've heard anything. I would love to know if we've received any feedback over the last 2 summers, not just with the splash pad, but also the Wendell concert series, Hub City Days, and everything else that gets run down there. I have to imagine that we've heard some complaints about not having bathrooms available, but I would digress and leave that to actually hear what our feedback has been. I think that would help this body decide how we move forward. I thought maybe we had started the restrooms in the CIP at one point. I don't know if that's a possibility down the line. I agree funding would probably be an issue. I still think there's some sort of need there, personally, just, as we've progressed through the year. But again, I would love to hear the actual data on that. And then, yeah, I think in terms of having an actual committee for this, I think this came up because the numbers at the time seemed very unrealistic, and there was several members of the body who were very upset and wanted to come up with an alternative solution, and that included a lot of different options, including renting out a nearby building, I think buying a building, I think porta-johns. Like, there was a ton of different options thrown out, and it was decided that we were just getting nowhere. And so I think that's what the committee's intent was to come back with a solution to this body. I personally think it's something we could probably handle at this level. I think at the time we had handled it, and then it kind of got brought back, which is the crutch of government, unfortunately. So I do think that if it's something that we can get some actual data on, I think no different than any other solution we've come up with in the past couple of years, we could probably figure this out on our own without having to have a separate committee. And then just a last note, I know, former committee member and former council member O'Reilly is definitely a big supporter of the bathrooms. Maybe we should reach out and see if he'd like to donate towards them.
I see there's others who want to speak, but I just want to touch on that for a minute. Yeah, I think your idea of maybe getting some Main Street Marshfield, some City Park and Recreation Department, visit Marshfield, other people get some idea of what level of feedback we're getting and what kind of feedback we're getting these days would be a good idea. Bringing a report back in late August or early September along those lines may be helpful.
Mr. Fire.
I think that we should have a committee, and there's a reason for that. I do know there's people out there that are willing to donate to this project. I'm not going to release who it is or what it is, but I think that person would probably, if you get to the point where you get a cost of what it costs to build, I think that you could probably get enough money from the community to build these bathrooms. And this gentleman that I'm talking about, or I know for a fact, would be the push behind it. So I think that you should get a committee so this committee can sit down with him and talk what they want to do. Because he keeps asking me, what are you doing? What you doing with this bathroom? When I tell him, I don't know, we have to get it on the docket. So I think you get a committee, we get a chance to look at it. And he's willing to donate towards it. You might even donate the whole thing for all I know.
Okay.
Mr. Rigel, you wanted to talk? No, you don't?
Yeah, well, as much as I talked today, I don't think you want to hear my voice anymore. No, I think at this point, and keeping my opinions on how this went down to myself, we need to make, and I agree with Mr. Fire, I think we need to have a committee here, look into it. Do we have a need for it? Do we want to do it? And if so, then get some numbers and see how we fund it. However, my biggest concern with this is the following. We had originally approved this. And then suddenly, over the course of time of it going forward, there was some distaste. Some people didn't like it. Let's go that outward. But they couldn't articulate the reasons for now deciding not to build it. And my problem is the following, is that if a council before me makes a decision and I don't like it, I shouldn't just randomly change it and vote no on it without actually articulating a reason for changing the opinion. We never got to that point. And effectively what happened here by sitting in this committee and having the committee meeting one time, over how many years was that, Steve? 3 years?
If after a very short time, there wasn't even, they'd have to reconstitute themselves, but you're right.
Right, and I guess that's my point, though, is that this was effectively a veto without us having the backbone to vote it down. We voted yes, and then we just said we're gonna pocket it and not do anything. So if we're gonna go forward with this, let's do it. Let's go forward. If we're not gonna do this, let's articulate why we're not doing this. But at the end of the day, I think it starts with that committee. It has to meet, it has to make a decision, do we need this or not? And then can we fund it?
Fire.
Sorry about that. I get to the post office a lot in the summer, and I see ladies got the opening back of their car, and they've got 2 or 3 kids, and they're trying to change the diapers without a facility. And I'm not going to mention about what this little boy was standing there, and he didn't have any clothes on, and I won't tell you what he was doing. And the mother went. So there is a problem with this. You know, if a mother's got, if you got 2 kids, you can't go into a porta potty and change a diaper and what are you going to do with the other 2 kids? Strap them to your whatever. So it's tough. Without a bathroom there, I can't believe, but all those kids down there, we don't need a bathroom in that area.
Yeah, I tease myself sometimes to staff about how often I leave my own office, so maybe I don't hear some of these things, and there probably are more things going on and more discussion happening that I'm aware of, so I think all the comments are very, are very good.
Ms. Tompkins, you have a motion you'd like.
Well, I would like to make a motion to reestablish the Windsor Plaza Bathroom Committee.
Mr. Giles, do you second that?
Yes.
Further discussion, Mr. Rigel.
No, I'm not on, okay. Do we actually need a motion? Because the last decision made on this was to create the committee.
Well, yeah, I mean, at this point, like I said, only 3 of those members are there, and I'm kind of going off on my own to try and reconstitute it. But I would accept that motion as a good motion in my mind. It's a way that this body, which has probably 3 different members than those days, maybe 4 different members, counting the mayor, in those days, is saying we want to do this. So
right, but I think
it just kind of reaffirms it. It's not the same players, so it's not like I'm, I'd have to find new players anyway.
Right, but I think it brings it back to my original point, though, is that if we made this decision 2-3 years ago, why are we revisiting it again if the decision's already been made? We should move forward with the committee and fill it with people that need to be on it.
Well, then maybe her motion is to refill the committee rather than restart the committee. It's semantics at that point. Only 3 of the 9 people are really available to us anymore. However you want to phrase it.
Would you like to edit your motion?
I will amend my motion that the Windsor Plaza Bathroom Committee would be refilled and reconvened.
I need a second on that. Mr. Rigel, you second that?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Say yes. That motion passes.
Now we're going back to the original. That was the amendment.
Okay. So that was the vote on the amendment. So now we go back to
The original as amended.
the original as amended. Is there discussion on that? Please vote.
You just voted to amend the original motion, so essentially it's the same thing as time. You are voting on an a motion that is now to refill and reconvene the Windsor Plaza Bathroom Committee.
So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
That motion. Now we can move on to item W, where I get to speak. The appointment of a successor to complete the unexpired term of alderperson for Council District 3 through April of 2028. The following person has indicated an interest in this position, presented by me. That person is John White Jr., who is here with us tonight, and I thank John for being patient for all the other business that he had tonight. John is a lifelong member of the community. He's been involved in city government through the Parks and Recreation and Forestry Committee for 11 years and has headed that committee, has been with it for 13 years and headed the committee for 11 years, been involved in many projects with the city. And John is here tonight. I'll give him an opportunity to stand up and introduce himself. And if anyone has questions, they can correct.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I want to start by, before I introduce myself, I know you got to thank you, Natasha, from the mayor. You got to thank you from the city administrator, but I'd like to thank you as a constituent for the excellent representation of District 3. Couldn't be happier with the job that you did, so thank you. And we'll miss you, certainly. I am John White Jr. I live at 206 South Schmidt, and that puts me right in District 3. And I would really be happy to join the council and do some good things for the city. I know that I've included a letter of interest in my resume as well, and it gets pretty detailed. So I'm going to be really brief because the brewer's starting in like 15 minutes. So I am a lifelong resident of Marshfield. I go by John White Jr. because my dad still lives here. And he's 91 years old and still a resident. So happy to say that. I worked in healthcare for almost 30 years. I'm an information technology professional. Got a little sick of healthcare with all the changes happening there. Decided to go into banking. I'm a vice president and information technology director at Ford Bank. I think I can use some of the knowledge that I've had in those positions to help on the council, as well as my ability to work with the community and some of the projects that we've done in the city, especially Parks and Rec. And it's kind of one of the bittersweet things if I have to leave the Parks and Rec committee. I've been on there for 13 years, and we've accomplished some really cool things for the city. So that's my goal. And my second goal is really to emulate what Natasha did as a representative of District 3. I want to be accessible. I do want to hear from my constituents, and I want to take those concerns here to the council. I will come prepared to meetings, and if I have questions, I'll ask them. I typically try to ask pretty good questions. So that's me. I would be really happy to join you.
Anyone have any questions for John? Okay, we will bring this back at the August 11th meeting for action, and we look forward to making a decision at that time.
See you in 2 weeks.
Item X is a financial overview and discussion of the council's 2027 budget priorities, introduced by Steve Bard, City Administrator, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, this is a time where we get maybe what I call kind of the playing field to sort of look at what we're facing for 2027 in this case. I kind of act like it's, if you're going to a football field, here's the goalpost, here's the 50-yard line, that type of thing, just kind of get a sense of what the situation is financially. You heard from the auditor tonight. That was really helpful to us to see where we ended 2026. And I'm just going to let Jennifer kind of give you brief highlights of where we stand.
So I'd like to just start to talk about how we're currently building our budget. And the discussion tonight will focus primarily on the general fund, where wages and related benefits are, approaching 70% of the budget. So just wanted to fill you in on behind the scenes what we've considered as we build out the biggest component of the general fund. We have two unions. It's a police union, not a policy union, sorry. And our fire union, those contracts are currently in the negotiation or will be nearing the negotiation phase. The fire contract expired at the end of 25. The police will be expiring this year. So we will have more to come with regards to those departments affected. The library will be proposing a 2.5% scale increase as of January 1, and then a 2.5% inflationary increase on July 1. All other non-represented employees will be looking at a 2.5% scale increase and a in July, and the 2.5 inflationary increase also in July. A quick peek at the CPI level, as of June 30th, we're looking at 4.2. So that means we are lagging behind the CPI adjustment, but 4.2 is not likely to happen, as it would be unaffordable. Considered in our budget, we had some vacant positions as of the end of May. We kind of begin that process on June 1. So I've listed what was vacant at that time according to the position control report, as well as what we're planning for 2027 under budget status. And then the comment is where we had those positions in 26. So the lighter text with the clerk, in the clerk department, there's an administrative professional at half FTE. That's been unfunded for a couple of years as we sort of repurposed Amy Krogman's old position into a HR specialist, but it's still on the books as unfunded. Parks and Recs, the activities coordinator, the senior center activities were rolled into other, their duties were rolled into other positions, probably in 25. The police did some restructuring with their office, with their record specialist and supervisor there. They've also always had a couple of ordinance enforcement officers on the books. One of those is fully funded. We did try a half and half scenario with between the development service and ordinance enforcement versus kind of on the police side with their duties. So that is now still unfunded, and then the equipment operator one has been unfunded for several years. Other positions of note would be the community development director was partially funded in 26. We're hoping to fully fund that in 27. The firefighter, paramedic, they're just, those are routine, I don't want to say routine, but vacancies that happen, they're funded. The library does a lot of restructuring as folks transition in and out, so that could even change a little bit. I know the director there works very hard to keep the number of hours consistent, but shuffles them around amongst different positions. We currently have a sergeant in the police department, assistant city engineer, civil engineer, and inventory assistant / operator in public works. So unless we receive different direction, that funded status is what will be presented in the budget. Another component of our budget is the WRS, which is our retirement system. We will be seeing a slight increase in the general population, where we'll be bumping up 7.2% to 7.25 in that category. Protective with Social Security, we're going to be seeing an overall increase from on the employer paid side from actually, I'm sorry, that's a decrease from 1470 to 1435, but their duty disability insurance will be going up. So we'll see a slight increase in that category. And then on the protective without Social Security, we'll be seeing an increase in both the normal employer requirement as well as the duty disability. So once we get all of those calculated, we'll give you a snapshot of what that means. This is unavoidable. These numbers are mandated by statute. In health benefits, we are anticipating an 8% increase in premium cost, according to our last update from our broker. We are seeing our utilization go up, so it's very likely we will see some sort of increase there. We have been enjoying a couple of years of very minimal or no increase there. Dental and vision, we're not anticipating any changes there. As far as benefits, what we've put in the plan so far is everything that our employees had as of the end of May. And then for any vacant positions, we're going to budget at that family level just to be conservative. We're also going to attempt to budget an amount for any qualifying events that may occur throughout the year. Just to make sure that if somebody has to move up a plan level, that we have money for that. My intention is to hold that money in the city administrator's contingency account. So if it's needed, it's available. Otherwise, it just remains unused within that account. Getting to the city administrator's contingency, I'm going to try to be more intentional about what we put in this category this year, rather than kind of leaving it at the end as a let's hope we have some money there. So one of the things that we'll want to make sure we have is our $25,000 emergency fund. At that level, the city administrator can approve emergency expenses. So we want to make sure that that money is available if needed. Any employees who are on an approved unpaid leave, whether that's military, FML, or some personal type leave, if we know about that, we'll hold that where we are holding their position open. I'd like to hold that under this account rather than in the department budget. Holding it in the department budget somewhat allows it to be redistributed elsewhere if that employee is out longer than anticipated. So we'll give it to the department as needed if the situation is known. As I said earlier, our unions are currently in negotiation, so we'll come up with an amount, as we progress through to maybe hold in there in case those contracts aren't settled by the time the year ends. And then we'll want to keep an amount in there, which would be currently undefined, but things come up throughout the year. And we have to draw from our contingency. So we want to try to come up with a reasonable amount to hold there for that situation. We also have a category called our ERIP contingency. This is our expenditure restraint incentive program. We put an amount here that's intended for base building. And where this comes in handy is if we are allowed to increase our budget given net new construction plus inflation. So if we're allowed to increase our budget and we have some savings from our past in our unassigned fund balance, this is a place where we can flex and spend those monies on those one-time items or those unusual items. So again, I will want to try to be intentional about how much money we set aside here. Getting to the point of our fund balance use, ideally this is going to be for our non-recurring operating or capital expenditures. So if we have something big like a complete reval or a police department garage or transfers to other funds such as our taxi and our communications, this is a place where we can hold that fund balance that we intend to use. At this point, before we really get too far in 2026, I think we could safely use about $400,000 of that unassigned contingency to bring us, we're over our policy limit, so this would bring us within that 25 to 30% range rather than being above. Some possible places, again, are listed below here. One of the things that also offsets any contingencies is our continuing appropriations for those items that we had intended to spend in the current year that end up being carried forward. That gets offset with fund balance use. Now, it almost seems a little backwards. We start with working on our expenditures. Our revenues are currently unknown at this time. They start to get released here in mid-August. We'll find out our net new construction number, and as well as our personal property aid. That one generally isn't indexed, so it won't probably change from years past. Shared revenue, there is a component of that that is indexed with the state sales tax. So we'll see exactly how much will get allocated to us of that increase in mid-September. Our general transportation aid comes either late September, early October, and then our exempt computer aid comes in October as well, but that one doesn't index, so it'll likely be the same. Those are the major components of our revenue in the general fund. Other places are licenses and fees that we charge. So once we have, hopefully we'll have all those numbers by the time we get to our first budget meeting. Where we're at in the process currently, by October 2nd, all of the department will have entered their budgets into the system. We'll be reviewing those before we pass from at the finance level, just to make sure we don't see any numbers that could be duplicated or transposed. And then we'll pass it off to the city administrator in later August, where he'll take some time to review with departments and finance staff before it's delivered to council on October 8th. And then from there, we have our budget meetings on the 13th, 19th, 26th, and 28th, if necessary. And our public hearing will be held on November 24th. And with that, I'll take any questions, or if you have any thoughts on any changes that you would want to see to the assumptions that we've been using to build the budget.
Any questions for Jen? Good presentation, no question.
Thank you.
We're going to skip on the agenda here because there was an error. The next item should have been items for future agendas.
No, correct. I don't know how it got moved down.
Any items for future agenda? Mr. Giles.
Yes, so with all the questions and concerns with data centers, especially so close to us in Rapids, I'd like to bring in a presentation, sorry, by Zoom, just for the council for educational purposes.
Okay.
Any other items for future agendas? Moving on to item Y. Adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes, chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Specifically, amendment number 1 to an existing airspace lease over Calshed Street. Number 2, possible raising of a dilapidated structure authorized by order of judgment. And 3, the exclusive right to negotiate, to acquire and develop city-owned property. Ms. Tompkins, your motion?
I motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Brand, you second that?
I do.
Please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
We're in closed session. We'll take a few minutes. back in open session.
Andy coming back?
We need Andy.
You're good. Come on in.
Thanks, Andy.
Item AA is action on matters discussed in open session. We have two items. Ms. Tompkins, your motion.
To approve the 6-year lease amendment, the airspace lease amendment over Calstead Street with Sanford Health.
And Fran, your second?
I do.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
And that motion passes. And need one more motion. Ms. Dallas, your motion.
I motion for the city of Marshfield to the rights to exclusively negotiate with Jeffers.
And Scott, you.
I do.
Okay. Any further discussion on that one? Please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Oh, we've got a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Natasha.
Adjourned.